Hey everybody, welcome to the channel, Out to More Fantastic Life. Today we're gonna have my host father. We're gonna take you guys to our backyard and to see the wonderful flowers. Ready?
Ready, let's go. The nice thing about a big garden is you really don't have to tend it all the while. Once you have more or less things in a row and set up, every year you just do a little tweaking and it takes care of itself pretty much.
That's wonderful. Oh.
These are forget-me-nots. They seed themselves in, I don't know who planted them. They could go way back in this garden, but anyway, they were here when we got here about 1996, and they've been here ever since. We just let them seed themselves back in.
Match my shirt.
They do.
Little yellow. We call them little yellow.
Well, we call them buttercups, oddly enough. And they come up in the lawn every year, and I leave patches of them in the lawn so that people can see them in bloom because I think they're pretty.
It's amazing. Wow. A lot of rhododendrons.
Well, in the 1980s and 90s, I lived on 30 acres of land and needed something to do with them, so we had a rhododendron nursery. And it was sort of a super hobby that got away. It was for hybrid rhododendrons, not for the standard rhododendrons that you find in landscape centers. And in its time, it became the largest hybrid rhododendron nursery north of Long Island. And when I left that area and came down to my old family home here in the center of Sandwich, I took with me the 250 plants that I couldn't stand to be without. They were just little things, maybe 6 inches or a foot tall, and I planted them around, and here they are.
I'm this big right now.
Oh, they've been here a long time. Every couple of years, for the ones that get over enthusiastic, I prune them back so that they stay 6 feet high and have about a foot distance between their neighbors so that they can't suffocate their neighbors or crowd them out, and so that everybody can see the flowers. Now, this is a good one to start with. This is scintillation. It's a hybrid hybridized by Charles Dexter, who was the first major hybridizer of rhododendrons in this country. He was working in the 1920s, and he hybridized one heck of a lot of plants. This is the only one that has become well established in the nursery trade. Its name is scintillation. The reason that you like its look is because if you look closely at one of these flowers, you'll see that it has a white center. Now that white center comes from a rhododendron with the species name Fortunei that comes from China.
Ooh.
And very famous species rhododendron. Now, here is the nearest thing to a neon sign that you can find in rhododendrons. It's called Parker's Pink. It's another Dexter hybrid, and if you look in the center of that plant, that flower, you'll find again the same white center from Rhododendron Fortunei. You can keep that center and make the outside almost as dark as you want. Let's go over here. Tony Consolini was Charles Dexter's gardener, and I had the good fortune to name this plant. We call it Consolini's Windmill, and we introduced it through the nursery because it's near the windmill and the Heritage Plantation where Charles Dexter lived. And again, if you compare the blooms, you have the same white center, only in this case, a deeper red outside. Tony Consolini, who was Charles Dexter's gardener, hybridized a whole lot of these plants. Now let's take a little tour through. This is just a species rhododendron. I think it's species Meternichii, and it's got fuzz on the underside, like a teddy bear. This is a plant called Leonard. It's weak on one side because it just had a tree fall on it. But it's got a little yellow center that gives it some. This one over here is a plant called cowsap that was introduced by Weston Nurseries. Weston was trying to get away from a very leggy plant called sappho that had a spectacular white bloom with a dark blotch. So they crossed it with a very hardy white rhododendron, and the other parent, the one with the spectacular white blotch, dark blotch, is right here. That's a rhododendron called Sappho. It got hit by our very mild winter for some reason, so it isn't blooming completely this year. And it doesn't behave well on the East Coast. On the West Coast, it behaves wonderfully.
In California.
In California, it's terrific. This is a little plant called Gigi. Now, Gigi is not named for any French dancing girl. When, after Charles Dexter died, a committee went around and evaluated his plants, took cuttings, grew them on, and so forth. And one of the guys who did this was a fellow named Harold Ross. And he laid the plants out in rows, and he gave them letters, A, B, C, D. He ran out of single letters, he gave them double letters, A, B, B. This is Ross, GG.
Oh, interesting story.
Watch out for the hole here. Now, I think this is Mrs. W.R. Coe. I'm not sure. It's another Dexter, just very fluffy with very nice white center. Okay. This is a hybrid of my own. And it's just a cross between scintillation and a very, very deep purple rhododendron. And remember, we were talking earlier about Rhododendron fortunei. This is a variant of the species fortunei. And this nice little pink was sent to me by the head of the Dutch Rhododendron Society, and we've named it Maria's Dream after my daughter. This one with the great big flowers, if you go up and smell it, it's very fragrant, called Dexter's Spice. It obviously is a Dexter hybrid. Now, this isn't rhododendrons anymore. For a long time, my wife wanted to have paths through here, and I couldn't figure out how to make paths with brick or stone or anything like that. It tends to get covered over and not work very well. I finally decided we ought to make her paths out of hosta. So this is a hosta garden. It's got some other things in it. There's some more rhododendrons out here. That's another Consolini's windmill. Have you ever seen box bushes as tall as this? Well, they've been here about 100 years. turns out that there was a little nursery that fronted on the street, one street down from us, School Street, and my grandparents, both teachers, had the house that I'm living in now. And when the nursery went bankrupt, let's say about 1928, something like that, the nursery sold its land, and my grandparents bought the little stretch of it that was in back of their house. And land was very cheap in those days. And the nursery raised box bushes, and they're still here.
Beautiful.
And as you know, this is the national flower of China, the tree peony. This is a stand of Solomon seal that I think has been here ever since the 1920s. These are hydrangeas that were growing from cuttings in a propagating frame called a nearing frame, often used for rhododendrons. My wife Jeannie loves hydrangeas, so we're big on hydrangeas. This plant just opened. It's one of my favorite rhododendrons. It's a Dexter rhododendron called Ben Mosley. It's got very pretty flowers, wonderful glossy leaves, does very well, forms a nice bushy plant. This is a yellow rhododendron that I hybridized. Not for commercial use, but yellow rhododendrons are hard to get. This used to be filled with rhododendrons. It's a patch of rhododendrons that I raised from cuttings in that nearing frame for my daughter's school, Falmouth Academy. See that spectacular plant with the maroon blotch in the center? There was a fellow who lived up in East Sandwich around the time Dexter was around and Tony Consolini was his gardener. And his name was Schumacher, and he was a German. Now, in the late 1930s, Germans weren't very popular in this country, but neither were Italians. I suspect that made it easy for Mr. Schumacher and Tony Consolini to become friends. And Schumacher, who had a large area of land, became absolutely fascinated with rhododendron hybridizing and hybridized piles of rhododendrons. And he became noted for not only copying the outer pink and inner white center of the best Dexters, but also for adding this maroon blotch that characterizes so many of his best hybrids.
Thank you, everybody. This is the wonderful backyard, and hope you guys enjoyed all the flowers. Thank you.